Las mañanas son más productivas con Richard Vaughan.
You're listening to Richard Vaughan Live.
Hello and welcome back. Okay, one more half hour of today's Thursday edition of Richard Vaughan Live. Today's Thursday, the next to last day of the working week. We have a weekend pretty soon. It's coming up. It's not just around the corner yet, but almost. But quieto parados todos, because we're talking about something very important now. And let's stop thinking about weekends and esparcimiento and enjoyment and leisure time, or as my British friends say, leisure time. Because we're here with Steve Matlin, a good friend of mine and a very interesting professional who works in a fascinating and exciting area of longevity, health and longevity, living a long, healthy life, much longer and much healthier than you think possible. And the secret is in understanding your telomeres and keeping them, los telómeros. I mean, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, I had no idea what this was. But I receive information about health, and what you're doing now, you and your colleagues are pioneers in what I said before, the cutting edge. Yes, for a breakthrough. When you have a barrier, barreras en la vida, psicológicas, pero they're barreras tecnológicas. These are technological barriers, and that's called the state of the art, and that's where the art is. The state of science and art is the state of the art. And you need to break through that to move that barrier back, to have a new area, to create a new state of the art. And you break through it by cutting through it with the cutting edge. So you're very fortunate, Steve, because the type of activity you are involved in, despite all the headaches that go with it, is one of the most exciting areas imaginable. You still enjoy it?
I still do, of course. I mean, for a long time, we were to use your analogy, in the world of early stage companies and venture finance. People joke that you have to determine whether you're on the cutting edge or on the bleeding edge.
Okay.
If you think about shaving with a razor, when you press too hard, you move from cutting to bleeding.
Right.
And when you do something as bold as this, it takes a lot of resources, and we've been enormously fortunate to have investors and shareholders like the Vaughan Foundation that was the original supporter to make this project happen. Of course, Spain's most important private foundation, the Fundación Vaughan, which through their foundational arm provided financial support to get this project to begin, and then many, many, many individuals who have invested in the company, of course, looking like any investor for a financial return. But we have many shareholders who have invested in this company because they believe in the overall aims of trying to make contributions to human health.
Okay, but here, basically, your activity, as you explained in the last half hour, is to measure telomere length on people and to estimate their biological age. In contrast to their chronological age. But and then you say this type of test and the results are very helpful in basically setting up or formulating a strategy, a life strategy to extend life and to improve the quality of life. But do you work, or is this applicable also to other specific areas of health, like heart disease or cancer? Do you get involved in addressing these more specific areas?
We do. We are involved in those, and that goes back to what we were discussing before the break, that telomeres are a contributing factor to basically every major age-related or what's called chronic disease. So as lifespan has increased in the past century by on average more than 30 years, Lifespan in the year 1900 was around 55 years, and now it's about 85 years in the OECD in the West, in the developed world. That has come through improvements in medicine and science and nutrition that have, in a large degree, eradicated many acute diseases. What do I mean by this? People used to die from malaria or the measles or chickenpox, diseases that had a single source, a bacterial infection, a virus. And through great science and medicine, we have found antibiotics or vaccines against those specific diseases, such that most of those diseases, which during all of humanity killed hundreds of millions, billions of people, those, to a large degree, for a large portion of the world, are today essentially eradicated. As a consequence of this increase in lifespan, now people are dying from diseases that are brought on by our lifestyle. Heart disease, cancer to some degree, certainly diabetes. These are diseases that come on when we have poor lifestyle, and over time, the burden of that poor lifestyle overwhelms the capacity of our tissues to heal themselves, to the point that for example, in the case of diabetes, our pancreas is unable to produce the insulin to correctly regulate the absorption of food, and we become, for example, diabetic. So there are publications in all of these fields. This is a field, telomere biology is a field that actually goes back to the 1930s. There's been 80 years of research. The first publication on telomeres was in 1938 by Barbara McClintock. And it went on and on and on and on. And there have been 4 Nobel Prizes of medicine in this field. And there are today over 25,000 clinical papers that have demonstrated the role of telomeres in every disease that you can imagine. So coming back to your question, our biggest clinical focus right now is on oncology and cancer. And this is because there is a very tight relation between telomeres and cancer. So I'll explain briefly why this is. Cancer cells, unlike normal healthy cells, become immortal. Cancer cells are able to repair their telomeres because they express a certain type of enzyme called telomerase. I won't go into it more than this. But essentially, they escape this what's called senescent pathway, this process by which normal cells deplete their telomeres and eventually stop dividing and drive us to aging. Doesn't happen in cancer. So when a cell mutates, because there's a genetic mutation in the chromosome, maybe because let's say, if we smoke and we get lung cancer, or we've been exposed to a lot of sun and we get skin cancer, those malignant tumoral cells can now continue to proliferate or divide unchecked. And this is why cancer, at a very basic level, is such a devastating class of diseases, because there are many different kinds of cancer, over 100 types of cancer. So one of the big focuses of our work is, if we can understand the dynamics of the telomere length in the cancers and help pharmaceutical companies and others to use this as a tool to develop drugs that will interfere with the expression of this enzyme telomerase in cancerous cells, we would have a very powerful pharmaceutical, or potentially, depending on how it's done, genetic pathway towards halting cancer in most types of cancer.
So in essence, with cancer, it seems to me, correct me, that you're trying to do the opposite with cancer that you're trying to do with healthy cells.
Exactly right.
Healthy cells, you want to maintain the length of the telomeres. You want them to be long and beautiful.
That's right.
And with cancer telomeres, cancer cell telomeres, you want to do the opposite. Reduce them, eliminate them, destroy them, and in essence, stop the cancer. That's right.
So with this in mind, and in order to demonstrate further diagnostic and prognostic capability of our test, we requested, and we were successful in achieving a very, very important European grant to fund clinical studies in oncology with our technology. And the name of the study that we've given it we've baptized it with the name OncoCheck.
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 sea, con verificación oncológica.
That's right.
All right.
So we submitted a proposal to the European Union. There's a special program in Europe for small companies, for PYMEs, for SMEs. It's called the SME Instrument.
Okay.
In 2016, and we proposed to use our technology, this technology we call TAT, telomere analysis technology, to demonstrate its ability for early diagnosis as in prostate cancer and in lung cancer, and its ability to be a prognostic tool for children's leukemia, or what's also called acute leukemia, and for adult leukemia, chronic lymphatic leukemia. We submitted this proposal to Europe. There were over 3,000 proposals submitted by life sciences and biotech companies across all of Europe. 2016, 9 companies ultimately received funding. We were one of the 9.
All right.
And we got we've received 3.1 million euros. And
3.3, more than 3 million.
Yeah,
okay.
More than 3 million euros. And with that money, what that's enabled is to initiate the largest clinical study ever performed in the world, which is being carried out here in Spain, involving more than 5,000 cancer victims and controls, that is, healthy individuals, with the collaboration of basically all of the major hospitals of this country.
Where is this being taking place? Where's
So the hospitals there's a long list of hospitals that are participating, but they include institutions like 12 de Octubre, Gregorio Marañón, La Paz, Niño Jesus, Reina Sofia, and many, many more.
All right. And so you will try to, you're working towards curing cancer, basically.
We're trying to use, we're trying to do a very small piece of which, tens of thousands of people globally are working towards this.
If you can find a way to slow down or stop the telomeres, eliminate telomeres, destroy telomeres in cancer cells, you
would cure cancer probably in many cases. Now, we're not going to do that by ourselves. You need to have the pharmaceutical industry and much larger people need to contribute to this. But we have the diagnostic tool that can evaluate whether a particular drug or molecule is working or not.
All right. Where are you present? LifeLength is not, it's a Spanish company, but you are penetrating other markets. What markets have you penetrated so far?
So we currently provide services to the physicians and to people, as well as to pharmaceutical companies, to researchers, to clinical organizations in about 40 countries.
40?
Yeah.
What's the most important country?
The United States.
Okay.
States. Yeah. The U.S. is the biggest market for our services, and we're hopefully going to be opening our own facilities in the United States sometime in the future in order to be able to do the testing there, because currently the samples that we get from patients and from hospitals, whether they're coming from Tokyo, we offer service in Japan, and we report in Japanese, whether they come from Indonesia, from Israel, from the Gulf, from Dubai, from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the entire European Union, Colombia, Mexico, Canada, Brazil, all those samples make their way here to Madrid, to our labs.
All right. What's the second biggest market? Spain or?
I think the second biggest market currently is probably Germany.
All right. Okay. And our physicians, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Steve is using the word physician. He's talking about doctor.
Doctor, yeah.
But when we address a doctor, we usually refer to the person as a physician. I guess that's the official word they prefer.
It sounds a little bit more,
Doctor's too generic.
Yeah.
It's like a teacher. I'm a teacher. Okay. But physicians, are they difficult clients? Are they easy to convince, easy to persuade, or are they skeptics by nature, or?
I think a lot of the answer is it depends, obviously, on the individual. There are a lot of doctors that say, I get this, and this is fantastic because this is such a great tool for helping to drive and adopt healthy behavior and monitor it. But then there are, of course, more skeptical physicians who say, well, what do I need to do this test for when I can tell my patient they need to eat? I can tell any patient they need to eat better, exercise more, manage their stress. So depending on when they went to medical school and how much they understand about this kind of biology and genetics, you have a smaller, greater education process to deal with.
But a doctor with this test can also know how urgent action is. I mean, some doctors, they say they have a clinical eye. They can look at you, look at your eyes, look at the color of your skin. I'm sure that some of them are very adept at guessing your biological age. Just after 30 years of experience, and they can tell by looking at the white of your eye or something. Or auscultando. I don't know how to say that. Just
doing just an exam.
Just a general physical
exam, yeah. Well,
but this certainly establishes, much more scientifically, your biological age, where you are.
It really does. And yes, there are a lot of doctors that think they can do that, but we've had feedback from physicians where they said, somebody who looked apparently healthy, had no real health issues that we're aware, was asymptomatic of a disease, and turns out that they had a significant heart disease. And in some cases, the doctors have discovered that because they've come back somebody who's 45 and they've come back 57. And the doctor says, this is what's going on here. What's the issue?
You mean the test?
The
came
test.
Back they're biologically 57 years old.
They're a decade older. And the doctor starts digging into this. And some of the physicians that we work with, what they'll do is they'll say, well, depending on the result of life length test, I will then order further tests, which are specific to what we would do for somebody of that age. So if you think about certain kind of screening tests, like for men and women, and doing a colonoscopy, for example, or measuring your prostate levels, those are tests that are typically performed depending on where you are at a certain age. Colonoscopies typically are from 50 and older. They start looking at PSA, typically in men from 40, 45. But if your biological age, if you're 35 and your biological is 45, maybe the doctor says, well, I'm going to do some of these other tests that I would typically do in 45-year-olds. And if the ability in most of these diseases, especially in cancer, the earlier you get it, the better the chance of survival.
So the faster than usual aging process can take place inside you and not be manifested.
That's right.
In your appearance or in your activity level.
That's right. I mean, think about the analogy. I mean, we can all think of people that we know who were really, really fit, and then suddenly something terrible happened to them. They had a heart attack, and they didn't smoke. They worked out. If you think about grabbing a wine glass and you're squeezing it, you're squeezing it harder and harder and harder. Nothing happens until it suddenly breaks.
Yeah,
it's under all that tension, but you don't see anything, and suddenly it snaps.
Right. Thing is, if a person suffers a lot of stress, if a person has, I don't know, often you can see it, or that person could feel it, climbing stairs, or just the disposition a person can have towards life, towards the ups and downs and typical obstacles of life. And see, that person, if he's perceptive enough, or they can make a good self-analysis or guess as to his own personal health. I don't know. But most people don't do that.
Well, I mean, you have different kinds of stress, right? You have inflammatory stress, physical stress, let's say being overweight.
Okay.
Overweight is being overweight. The reality of that is it's one of the things that most drives aging, because the extra weight that you're carrying requires that your body provide tissue, blood, oxygen to all of these unnecessary, essentially unhealthy cells. So people who are overweight have a lot of inflammation, and that leads to heart disease, leads to all kinds of problems. But you also have mental stress, and this is much harder to measure. How do we measure the stress derived from our work, from difficulties in the family, from maybe financial difficulties from time to time? All of those things also keep us up at night, and that's very difficult to measure. There aren't a lot of lab tests that measure this. So some of our scientific advisors say telomeres are a long-term sort of readout on the cumulative burden of stress and how it's impacting your health.
So by doing the telomere test, you can see stress, you can see indications of something that I have to change my lifestyle.
Exactly.
Radically.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so how's your age? Are you biologically young, old?
No, my biological age is a few years older than my chronological age.
Really?
Yeah. Not too much.
Which means have you been making lifestyle changes?
I've made a lot of lifestyle changes. Yeah. I'm in better physical shape now at 50 than I was at 40, by far.
You know, it's funny about that because I think people between maybe the age of 27 and 45, they're so busy numbering every tree, they never see the forest, and they're stressed out. They don't see the light of day. I swear, between maybe age 26 and 45 or 50, I didn't see the light of day. I mean, you can't create a small or big empire without working hard. And, you know, it's funny because one of my favorite rock groups is Queen, okay? But I didn't even know Queen existed until after Freddie Mercury's death. I started learning about Queen because of his death and because of Barcelona Olympics, because he was with Montserrat Caballé singing the hymn and I always wonder, who is Queen? It's because, and I'm a musician myself, so it's between, in those certain years, I didn't see the light of day, you see. And so it's stressful to a certain extent. I mean, I think it's very difficult for stress to affect me because I've never had, thank God, serious financial problems. And I've never had, well, I have had, but after age 22, I never had a stressful boss. You know, to work with somebody who's irrational will kill you. I mean, it'll kill you if you allow yourself too many years under that type of stress, you see. And so that can kill. And you say telomeres will reveal.
They're going to reflect this stress because the more stress you have, the more they're going to have aged, the more they're going to have shortened.
Okay, where can people get information on this?
They can. It's very easy. They can simply go to our website, lifelength.com, and I'll allow myself to mention that the word length for all my Spanish friends is spelled Length.
GTH, no GHT.
Height, width, length.
Length. It's funny because the pronunciation of length is like a K in the middle. Length. But life length, todo junto, vida longitud, literalmente, .com o .es, .com.
.com, .es doesn't matter. And then once you get there, there's a link for our attention client service, and you can send us an email or fill out a little form. And if you're interested in doing this test, then we'll get in touch with you. We can make those arrangements, and we can do that anywhere in all of those countries that I've listed.
Yeah,
around the world, and in all of those languages as well.
Wow. Okay, by the way, after the class, we're going to make an appointment, and I'll go for a blood test.
Okay.
Because I think it's time for me to do it again.
Well, I think you made a really strong point. I mean, of course, people who are in their careers from the time they finish university into their 40s and so on are enormously focused on building their professional careers and their families. But given what longevity is today, we have to think about the long game. You know, think about where you're going to be and how you want to be when you're going to be 60 and 70 and 80, and recognize that how you eat, how you live your life in your 20s and 30s and 40s is affecting you, again, downstream, way downstream. And so the more conscientious you are about taking care of yourself, the less chance you're going to have of developing all of these age-related diseases, and the more vibrant and healthy you're going to be.
All right. It's tough as a startup. Startups are tough. I mean, I give seminars on entrepreneurism, and one of the segments of my presentation always is a book my father sent to me in 1977 when I started this company. And he sent me a book. And the title of the book is How to Run Your Own Company. Fine. The author was one of the ex-chairmen of the American Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so he's a good guy. I read the first page and closed the book. Never read it again. The first page said enough. And it was a rude awakening or a nice, let's say a slap in the face. It said, now you have your own business. Congratulations, you're your own boss. Good luck. He said, according to the American Bureau of Business Statistics, 95% of all new companies die in the first 5 years. Okay, already that would sober up the drunkest guy. drunk with the romance of starting his own company. And then there was a list that said the reason for the death of these 95% of the companies are in the following order of importance. 50%, the incompetence of owner-manager. Boom. With that, and the next one was they didn't understand the market. The next was financial, which is basically incompetence as well. So I realized I need to do a little bit of self-analysis. You have a successful startup, more than 5 years, eh? Congratulations, which means you've got something good going, and I think it's very important. Steve Matlin with us here. So lifelength.com, look it up. I think you'll find something very, very interesting.